The next person I'd like to introduce is a man named Mr. Mike Hackworth. There's so much I can say about Mike Hackworth. You might know him, and the original reason we invited him here today is that he was the first victim in the original Town That Dreaded Sundown. He was just pretending to be a victim, of course he was, he's still with us. But he's the person in the very first scene who represents the Jimmy Hollis character, and actually they reused some of that same footage and paid Mike a residual for the new movie. So he didn't even have to do any new work, so he got some money from MGM, so I was nice to hear about that. But Mike is a multi-talented guy. He is a musician. He has an angelic voice, which I think is comparable to Roy Orbison. If you haven't heard it, you should definitely hear him sing sometime. He is also a great visual artist and taught at Arkansas High School. We had a great video in 1986 when I was at Arkansas High School, Pink Flicks, which some of us still have, I know. And Mike Hackworth was responsible for that. So Mike, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mike Hackworth.
Howdy. In 1958, I was home from the University of Houston for the weekend, and I always tell a little story about my dad. He was on the radio here for about 53 years. Some of you may remember the Uncle Dudley show. Friendliest voice on the air. That's what he told me. He said, "Son, there was a boy this weekend that was lost in the woods west of the railroad tracks that run between Texarkana and Ashdown. And he said, you know, it's really impossible to get lost in the woods if you know what to do." And I said, "What's that, Dad?" He said, "Well, you just go sit down on a stump somewhere and just be real quiet and wait, and pretty soon an armadillo's going to come by, and you very quietly get up and follow that armadillo because you know that little sucker's going to get run over sooner or later." He was full of those. Speaking of independent film, an independent film is just a professional film production that results in a feature film that's produced mostly or completely outside the major film studio system. In addition to being produced and distributed by independent entertainment companies like Halco International, they're also produced and distributed by some of the subsidiaries of the main major studio systems. Independent films are sometimes distinguished by their content and their style and the way in which the filmmaker's personal artistic vision is realized. I believe that's what Charlie Pierce did, and most of them do that. But not always. Independent films are made from considerably lower budgets than major films. What they do is they get together some executive producers who are really the folks that put the money into the movie, because movie making is just like any other business. People want to make a profit. The people that put the money up want to get their money back and make a profit. On top of that, of course, the distributor wants to make a profit by distributing the movie to different of their movie houses, like Halco International, Joy Halco, remember the Joy Theater here in Texarkana. He had several theaters, and he helped on another movie I was in a couple of years after this one was made. The marketing of independent films is most of the time characterized by limited release. One thing they do is they'll put it out in a test market. It's called four-walling. They'll make 20, 30, 40 copies of the film, and a small group will take it and take it around, like a 3 or 4 state area, and they can find out if they're going to make enough money to make some more prints. But a lot of them don't like that. Now we've got to remember that there are, in the 70s, there were like hundreds in that decade of movies that were made. And very few of those movies made it actually to the screen. I think that Charlie Pierce was thinking outside the box in a lot of his movies. He was one of the important movie makers of the 70s in the independent realm. When he made the Town That Dreaded Sundown, of course he did a lot of movies, like 12, 13 movies, I guess. But, some of the scenes you see, like the trombone scene, I know you've seen the movie, most of you have anyway. Earl Smith was a screenwriter, I believe, in that movie, and he's also the guy I read for. But anyway, Charlie had a trombone instead of a saxophone because I just imagine they got together and thought about, well, I can't use a saxophone for this scene, because it's not going to work. They thought out of the box and used a different instrument. Of course, that was something to do for artistic effect, to bring horror to the audience, to make them say, "My gosh, what a way, to be killed." And let's see. Before distribution and theatrical or retail release, an independent film production can rival a mainstream film production, because during that same period of the 70s, there were a lot of independent films that came out, like Easy Rider and Ghost, and a lot of movies that made big bucks, several $1 million. I have no idea what kind of money Charlie's movies made, but I can tell you this: if they didn't make a profit, he wasn't going to make another movie, or not very many anyway. So his movies made money, and he was happy about it, and the distributors were happy about it, and so he just kept on doing that until, I guess, he ran out of ideas or whatever. I don't know that story. But Ghost, Star Wars, Jaws, there were a lot of movies that were filmed, but few make it to the big screen. A lot of them go to festivals, and they can go into HBO now, and overseas sales, Netflix, downloads, all that stuff. So there are a lot of more ways now that folks can use to get their money back. Now, when I'll talk a little bit about my first movie, and I was the first victim in that movie. There was a cattle call. They put an ad in the paper. It said, "You want to be in movies? Well, come on down to the Kings Row Inn on such and such a date and such a time, and fill out the paperwork, and you can read for somebody, and you got a chance to be in a movie." And they call it a cattle call because, people just like a herd of cattle went down there, and I was one of them. I found out later for Earl Smith, who I mentioned a while ago, wrote the screenplay. I believe I was called back the next day, and I think I read a little bit more, and after a little while I was called in and said that I had a part. I had no idea what part, but they gave me a script, and I read the script, and of course I wanted to do Spark Plug. I thought I probably had that part, but I didn't. Charlie did that, and that was a good move on his part. I was going to play a fellow named Sandy Fuller, who was one of the first victims that was not killed in the movie. As far as I can remember, we had to get a wardrobe and receive they sent us down, we got a 1940s haircut, and I had a big head of hair then, and it was blonde. I think my bride, her sister, talked me into changing my hair to blonde, and they cut most of it off. But I didn't feel too badly about it when we went out to Jimmy Clem's ranch to, as I recall, shoot that scene. And Charlie got with us and said, "It's a very important scene because this is going to be the first bad thing that's going to happen in this movie." Vern Stearman comes in and does the intro and stuff, and then we were out there, and he said, it's going to take us all night, or most of the night, to do this. And we said we'd do our best. You know, we didn't have too many lines, but we had a lot of reaction shots. Charlie gave us this direction, and we started after we got down to the site, which he had a very large generator that he had purchased. And they laid a lot of line way down, like 200 or 300 yards into the woods. And that was so they couldn't hear the generator, I was told. The generator was pretty quiet. And we started our scene by driving in way out from an old Ford, I think it was. And they had, I couldn't hardly see because they had a lot of lights. I was learning all this stuff about shooting movies. They had these lights underneath there that were blinding, just kind of like these are. You know, I was trying to watch the road, you know, or the pathway down there. So they had it pre-marked for a spot. There were lights down there, and there was camera people and, you know, all that. So it wasn't that difficult to get down there. But I found out that, you know, I had learned this partly in live television when I was at the University of Houston. The University of Houston had the first license for a school for live television, and that was one of my majors down there, was television production and art. And we used the cameras similar to the way they use theirs, but not nearly as hard to do. I met one guy I met. I was really glad to meet. His name was Bud Davis. He was the stuntman in that movie. He played the Phantom, you know, dressed up and all that stuff. He was a big guy, and he said, "Now look, we can do this once." I said, "Do what?" He said, "I'm going to break the glass on that car, and I'm going to reach in, I'm going to grab you, and I'm going to pull you out through the window." I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah, he's a big guy." And he said, "Now we can do this once, or we can do it twice. What's it going to be?" And I said, "Well, let's do it once." You know, so he got us aside, and I said, "I'd like to do this once." And besides, one of the guys, I forget his name, he was an electrician there, but he said, he was a parts guy too, I guess you'd call him, prop guy. He said, "I'm running out of sugar glass." That's what they put in the window when you roll the window down and you put the sugar glass in there for those shots. So they didn't want to break the glass in the car. And besides, it'd be very difficult to break. But the sugar glass, it broke all to pieces, you know. So we had to shoot the thing sitting in the car with the camera in the back seat. We did that. You did all the scenes that were shot inside the car at one time. I mean, you didn't go back and forth, put the camera in the back, then out, then back. You did all of them inside. And all the outside shots, of course, were going to be outside once. So, when he broke that glass, I was really scared of it, because I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a scary atmosphere, actually, that night. And he reached in and he had already told me what to take a hold of, you know, and how to hold his arm and how to turn my body and all that. And he yanked me right out of there and dropped me right on the ground. And that was a cut. And the first thing I asked him, I said, is that enough? And Charlie was laughing. He said, "Yeah, that's a good take there. We'll do that one." And we shot a little bit more that night, but it was a wet shot. The electrician guy, I wish Little Joe or somebody like that.
Calicanato.
Yeah, did they call him Little Joe?
Calicanato.
Okay, Calicanato. Okay,
Little Joe. Calicanato.
Okay. He said, "I've got all the lights set up down in the woods, and they had a small fire truck there, and Joe, when they said the action, you know, we were out, he laid us back down on the ground where we were before, and he did the sparking. He had 2 wires in his hand like this, and he was doing like this, and the lights were flashing in the background against the trees, and all of a sudden it started raining on us. There was that fireman over there, and he was spraying that water, and it was coming down on us. And so I don't know if they actually used that. I can't remember. Did they use that? wet scene.
They usually use, my daddy used to use fire trucks to make rain and airboats to make wind.
Yeah, well, it rained on Saturday. So, that was my introduction to that. It was great fun, and I got $50. Yeah, I'd have done it for nothing. But I got $50, and that wasn't too bad back in '76. $50, Spend it on my life, I'm sure. And we, after this thing was over and everything, they had the premiere, and I think it was maybe at Oakland. I can't remember which city it was at, but I think it was the Oakland. We went out to the Pines, and we met we met Ben Johnson anyway. I remember doing that, and had a great time. I know that in Wikipedia, it's listed as a horror film in Wikipedia, and another place called RagerMusic.com has Sundown as one of the 100 favorite horror movies of all time. So I thought that was interesting. That stuff I looked up. I thought that was pretty interesting. But we had a great time doing that. And Dr. Tennyson, some of the things you said a while ago was kind of eerie to me because I worked at the Paramount as an usher. And I went to Arkansas High.
Too respectful.
I was in the band. Played trombone. Yeah, so, I kind of got a little shiver there. And that wasn't but about 5 or 6 years after that all took place. I was about 9 years old in 1946. And later, I worked for a little lady down there. At the Paramount, I changed the one sheets, and I ushered, and I took up tickets, but they wouldn't let me behind me. I kind of really made popcorn, but for a good reason. Ate a lot of popcorn. At the beginning of the film, it states that the first attack occurred on Sunday, March 3rd. It really took place on Friday, February 22nd. And Jimmy Hollis, I played the part of Jimmy Hollis, Sandy Fuller, of course, was not pulled out of a window. The girl, Mary Jane Larry, played by Linda Mae Jenkins in this movie, was told to run, and she was chased down and sexually assaulted with the attacker's gun. So the reports that I've read, and this is from things that I have read off the internet and other reports. In the film, the doctor claimed that she was bitten and chewed. Mary Larry only had a cut on her head from being beaten, according to one report here. The next attack in the film claims that it happened on Saturday, March 24th in 46. March 24th was on Sunday. In the film, Howard Turner and his girlfriend Emma Lou Cook were found outside the vehicle, and Emma Cook was shown tied to a tree with bite marks. In real life, both victims were found inside the vehicle, shot to death. And the character Deputy Ramsey in the movie was patrolling the area and found the bodies, and afterward he sees the Phantom getting into a car and driving away. On the real morning of March 24th, a passing motorist spotted the car and found the bodies of Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore inside before calling the authorities. By the time the officers were on the scene, the killer was gone. The film states that locals started buying guns and locks and knives and what have you, but that didn't happen until 2 months later in May, according to newspaper reports. The characters in the film then brought in Captain J.D. Morales of the Texas Rangers. And, truthfully, or more truthfully, Lone Wolf did not come to Texarkana until after the second double murder here at Spring Lake Park. The film has Morales naming the killer a phantom, but the naming of the killer didn't come until after the murders in April according to the executive director of the Gazette. The film then shows a high school prom with the character Peggy Loomis playing the trombone. The officers were setting up decoys in an attempt to capture the Phantom. And Betty Jo Booker, who played saxophone, she didn't play trombone, like I mentioned before, and she was really playing a Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW Hall. and it was a social event. It wasn't a prom, as portrayed in the movie. And her friend Paul Martin, the officers did not set up decoys until after she and her friend Paul Martin was murdered. In the film, Peggy and Roy are a couple, but Booker and Martin were only friends in real life. They were just buddies. She and Martin were shot to death, and their saxophone was missing for 6 months. In the film, Deputy Ramsey collects Peggy's instrument for evidence. Well, that didn't really happen. Now, as far as the Starks out on 67, in the film, Helen Reed sees the attacker before being shot, but Katie Starks was shot through the same window as her husband, and she didn't see her attacker until he tried crawling through the kitchen window. Mrs. Starks ran out of the house, but she wasn't chased. At the end of the film, the officers chase the Phantom and shoot him in the leg underneath a train, I think. But the real Phantom was never chased or shot, and we really don't know if the guy was wearing a hood. No way to know that. It was reported by the girl, and boy, they had something over his head, some kind of hood. But they lived to say that, but the rest is just, good theater, really. But he was never chased or shot. Now, there's one shot I love in that movie, and it's right at the very end. There's a shot on that, when that train was going by, there's a shot of a camera crew on a flatbed. A flatbed car of the train. I saw it at the screening, and it went by, and it just really tickled me. These guys were behind the camera, one was, the other was holding something. And they were busy shooting and stuff, and the car went by, and there was the crew that went by. They had been shooting, I guess, the second camera, because you want to try to do those things in one take instead of using a lot of takes to do that. So, that's all I have, friends. I would like to mention, though, that just as a matter of record or information, I counted 31 cast members in that movie. 31 cast members. That means there were 27 locals. Now that's one way that these folks made money, is because they used locals and paid them $50. They saved a lot of money that way, and people were eager to do it. And something I just thought of, a few months after that, we had screened and everything, a guy in Newsweek or Time, one of those magazines, had reviewed this movie, and he had some good things to say about it and some not so good things, but mostly praising it. And he said there were a lot of locals used in the movie there at Texarkana, and he said something I thought was pretty funny. He said the locals, their East Texas accents were mainly believable. Mainly believable. I thought that was pretty funny. It was probably neat. Also, let's see. I got another note here. I can't read my writing. Okay. Here's what it is. There were 42 people that worked on this movie. The crew, we're talking about, I'm talking about crew people. That's like cinematography, film editing, art direction, makeup, sound department, special effects, stunts, just goes on and on. So it takes a lot of money to make a movie. And folks have to raise a lot of money to make a movie. And then you just hope you've got a good script, hope you have some good acting, hope the camera works good, hope the sound is good, hope that you can get it distributed, hope, that you can do all this. Charlie was very good at that. He did a great job. He was a really friendly guy. We thought a lot of him. He was always friendly to me, and he will always be remembered by me. And like my dad would say on the radio, "Fred, I see my time is up. Thank you for yours. Thanks for listening."